speech, and the key tune of this speech was his phrase that there are no doubts, there are no differences, in this atmosphere with all those difficulties and problems, problematic future. He has just one idea, one statement, one message, that Ukraine will win, and of course everybody would stand up when he said that, and everybody supports what he said. Also, I have to say that today the President of Ukraine, Commander-in-Chief Volodymyr Zelensky, spoke in the parliament, and part of his speech was precisely about his impression of Boris Johnson's speech and appreciation of assistance provided by the case. And in addition to such inspirational things, there have been some concrete things about military assistance from the UK to be increased. It will increase even more. It has been about quite big amounts already, and it will increase even more. There have been some specific cases what the UK will provide to bring our victory even closer. It's about anti-ship systems, about radars, and of course about all sorts of humanitarian and organizational assistance, and armored fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, armored vehicles, as they call them, armored equipment. I think that this assistance will continue to increase, and we'll continue receiving it, because as the President of Ukraine said in his speech, now in the UK it would be difficult to find any place where there would be no one Ukrainian flag. So in all key places and symbolic places, and with all those important symbolic characters, from musicians to actors to opinion leaders to politicians, and of course Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II, everybody supports Ukraine, supports us in our fight, and Boris Johnson is personalizing this understanding that this support from the UK will increase even more, and it inspires us as politicians, as parliamentarians, parliament members, and I think it will further inspire our nation for that resistance, for that victory which we have been creating now in this war waged by Russian Federation. Again, based on Boris Johnson's opinion, we can say that of course this war has not been motivated in any way, but he also said that this war has not been well thought of by Russia, because they entered the war which will not end well, which will end in a very bad way for them. Thank you, Mr. Korniyenko. Speaking about the economic side of the war, we understand that the Verkhovna Rada has been faced with new challenges. It's about restoration of cities. What are the priorities in this area? We have been working a lot with the government. Indeed, the government, the Cabinet of Ministers, has a lot of tools at the moment to implement something. We saw that decision recently, whereby in several days, it's about fuel. In several days we'll have some price changes, but it will be possible to purchase fuel. At the very beginning of martial law, we implemented very strong tax and customs reform, and most of the categories of goods have been free of customs duties, and many businesses will be able to work under a unified tax, 2%. There are some fine nuances, of course. It will be difficult for big businesses, but for most businesses, this system will fit them well. But we have to understand that there are those processes about engaging, getting funding from our partners, and the Parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, has been involved in those quite a lot. Our Parliament members travel around the world. It's about diplomacy. They travel, starting from our neighbors. We will have several delegations to those countries where we have the highest numbers of displaced persons persons, Poland, Baltic countries, Romania. We understand that there are many Ukrainians, there are a lot of Ukrainians, and there are a lot of problems about their presence there. And on the other hand, we continue discussions with our colleagues and share with them information about the economic situation in Ukraine and Ukraine's needs for assistance. We know what we need, and it was publicly announced by our Minister of Finance and our Prime Minister when they visited the United States. Of course, now the world tries to help, the whole world tries to help us in various ways. Of course, it's also about access to those frozen assets of the Russian Federation. It's not that simple and easy, but this story also develops at its own pace, and sooner or later we believe it will work. Now about the restoration of our cities, rebuilding of our cities. We hear from various countries some information about their willingness to participate in the restoration of various towns and villages. Do we have anything in the Verkhovna Rada about this process? Yeah, we have a draft law. We haven't considered it today. 7282 is its number, and it's about changes to urban development regulations to launch those processes even faster. Of course, we have to understand that before rebuilding, restoring our cities, we have to understand the damages. And it's about the big amount of work, and it's already being done. People approach to authorities, and it's about evaluation. It's about being able to use DS software to see respective residential or industrial facilities there. And definitely there will be restoration and recovery, and those plans are under discussion now, and the whole strategy of economic recovery is being discussed, reorienting our economy to new areas, new sectors. We have been discussing it a lot now, and of course one of important stages here on this way will be our Euro integration, and we expect that we will receive that status, will become a candidate for the EU in the summer, and based on that we will continue sorting out economic issues. About particular examples, yes, there have been a number of those, and Boris Johnson mentioned the UK's attention to Kyiv and outskirts of Kyiv, Oblast. We understand that it has suffered a lot. Also, there has been that initiative from Estonia. They're much interested in Zhytomyr Oblast, and soon they will start doing something. I know that mayors of small towns and their heads of local territorial communities also talk a lot to their twin cities, partner cities. It's all about humanitarian assistance now, but they have also been discussing some systemic things. It will all develop now. Let's listen to the government, the cabinet of ministers, watch their announcements from them, and if needed, we'll regulate it with laws. Social policies are also an important part. Now, if possible, could you please share some information about support for our servicemen, the military, their families, displaced persons? Have there been any steps, any developments already to motivate our displaced persons who have been abroad to come back to Ukraine? At the moment, you know, this issue needs some gradual steps. We have some internally displaced persons, and unfortunately some of them don't have any home anymore. Their homes have been destroyed, or they cannot return to where they left from. Of course, those are more urgent issues, because we understand, of course, that there are also problems for our displaced persons who are in Europe, in particular with their accommodation. But there, at least, there has been some support, including support based on EU funding to a varying extent in various European countries. But we also work on developing that support in Ukraine. We have implemented some mechanisms whereby employers would employ people, those internally displaced persons in western regions of Ukraine. They will get compensation from the government for each job created. Also, recently, we increase the amount of assistance to be received by people, that 6,500 hryvnias. We added a number of oblasts, a number of people. I think the Cabinet of Ministers made that decision yesterday. And of course, the military have already received some payments. Those payments have already been increased quite a lot, especially for those involved in combat actions. And even in the second half of April, we have already adjusted a lot of things. We had some technical problems sometimes where people would not receive that assistance. We have already regulated and adjusted it. Now we have been working towards not only armed forces of Ukraine, but also their colleagues in combat, like the National Guard and State Emergency Service. All those people deserve those social guarantees, and we will continue working on those. Now the Cabinet of Ministers has two big tasks in the financial area. The first one is about the armed forces and about proper functioning of our army and all its units, and it's about social payouts, pensions and salaries to those financed from public budgets. All those payments are being made, and capital expenditure is about restoration, but now it's more about temporary things like bridges, some roads which have been which we need to recover logistics to bring it back to normal. Mr. Korniyenko, recently the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine passed the law about prohibition of activities of, say, pro-Russian political parties. And it was accepted by the public in a very positive way, but we understand that now there have been some difficulties with local authorities, local self-government, because there was a high percentage of deputies from those parties. Has there been any solution? Those decisions under discussion now, you know, for us, what is important is this. While having satisfied the public demand for some political illustration against such politicians, also at the local level, now we understand that even if you consider the percentage, if you consider the numbers, we have one deputy from Kyiv who has dropped his power, and there has been a criminal case about high treason against him, and there has been a case against Viktor Medvedchuk about high treason. It's about some small percentage, but in local authorities, in local councils, there are many deputies from those collaboration parties like Opposition Bloc for Life and other parties. In Mariupol, we see that there is a lot of those former members of Opposition Bloc for Life who have now got various positions, from so-called mayors to the deputies of so-called mayors. And we see that in local councils we have this problem. And the problem here is this. The society, the public will not tolerate it, and the public will request from us, the people will request from us to take some action. At least in some places where it has already happened, we have to discuss probably some suspension of activities of such councils. It's not that good to suspend local councils, local self-government authorities, but if there are facts, if there are criminal cases, and also, you know, even in public, you switch your TV on and you see how those people say somewhere in Russia that we are mayors and all that. At the same time, we have to maintain the legitimacy of those local councils on in territories which have not been occupied. We have about 40 councils of various levels in cities, towns, villages and oblasts, where if you remove members, if you remove deputies from Opposition Bloc for Life and Shari's party and other opposition, those prohibited parties, we'll have a problem with making decisions because there are certain quorums levels established by law to make certain decisions in those authorities. So we are now developing some model to maintain the rights of those local self-government authorities, and at the same time to satisfy the public demand for elimination of those deputies at the local level, because we understand that they have already brought a lot of bad things. There are many approaches, many mechanisms which are under discussion now, but you have to understand that those things have to be well thought of to avoid any adverse effects. Thank you, dear colleagues. You can ask your questions. Please use the microphone. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. I'm Oleksandr from Ukrinform. Mr. Korniyenko, in the Verkhovna Rada, there has been some idea raised about zoning of Ukrainian regions. It's very much obvious that there are various areas like front areas, areas neighboring the front and other areas, and they have to have a different roadmap, different taxation and so on. Have there been any developments already about this idea? Is anybody working on that, and if it can be implemented, then when? Well, there has been, there is our parliamentary committee for development of the government, local self-government. They have been working, they have been discussing it with the Ministry of Regional Development. There has been a broad public discussion. You can read various publications on various websites. Indeed, zoning has been discussed for a long time. This is not just a new idea resulting from this war, but as a result of some of our territories becoming temporarily occupied and some territories neighboring the front line, and there are logistical problems, and there is shelling, first of all, artillery shelling, because we understand that, you know, rocket strikes can be in any city of Ukraine, and also there are other areas, and we understand that this idea of zoning may be relevant because we may get some regions being more successful in economic terms and some regions that would require some support. Previously we had that practice of so-called flattening, leveling. We had some capable communities and less capable communities, and those capable communities would help incapable ones. Some money would be taken from those capable ones and redistributed to less capable communities. Now we may get even oblasts or provinces which only have incapable communities. We have to resolve it. Also, on the other hand, in some areas with a better economic climate, with better investment climate, we could discuss some incentives for businesses to invest more in those areas. So here we could discuss different approaches about local taxes, local taxation, because, you know, we are a unitary country. We cannot have different taxation systems in different oblasts or provinces, but there may be local additional opportunities, additional local taxation to be discussed by local authorities. Also, we have to understand that it's also about decentralization, devolution of taxation powers. We have been discussing it for a long time, and I think that now we have this opportunity where if you have some regions which have better abilities, they can start administrating their taxes on their own. On the other hand, we have some oblasts where some government services are unavailable, including taxes. So these are ideas that we have been discussing, working on them. We will see how it will fit the situation, and then we'll turn them into draft laws and implement them. Thank you, Mr. Korniyenko. Any more questions, dear friends? Good afternoon. In Ukrinform, we have some questions from our journalists. Now we know that interparliamentary cooperation has been developing in a rather active way. Maybe this week we'll have some visits by foreign parliament members to Ukraine, or the other way around. Ukrainian politicians will make some international visits, pay some international visits. Could you please describe? There are many visits. Right tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow, many groups will travel to different countries, and they will also work on some issues of our displaced persons, and they will work with governments and parliaments in various countries. Maybe our vice speaker, Ms. Kondratyuk, she travels often. Maybe she will also travel. I have planned such visits, and as far as I understand, we'll receive a delegation from Moldova tomorrow. I don't know all the details yet, but we have this information. There will be other parliament members. I think this week we have planned several more delegations to visit us. There are also some nuances. You know, some delegations don't disclose that information for security reasons. You see that some delegations from the United States have been traveling in some secret mode because of their security requirements. We are glad to see all friends of Ukraine here. We are glad to share our opinions. We thank them. We appreciate that. You know, to a large extent, those visits support us. They are of supportive nature. Of course, if they visit Kyiv, then we ask our colleagues to share our pain from what we have seen in the suburbs of Kyiv. No one has refused it as yet. Unfortunately, those are, you know, there are those images which finally persuade many people about what is this war about, that this is the war against lay people, against Ukrainians. And after such trips, parliaments make decisions about recognizing those events as genocide against the Ukrainian people, and we expect that it will continue and the world will be with us due to such visits. Thank you, Mr. Korniyenko. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for finding time to join us. Thank you, friends. Stay with us, and in literally 5 minutes we'll have our next briefing, and there we'll discuss fighting the